The heat of the California summer wrapped itself around the quiet suburban neighborhood of Santa Clarita, making the pavement shimmer under the relentless afternoon sun. The rhythmic tick of sprinklers echoed through the neatly manicured lawns, and the scent of freshly cut grass mixed with the faint aroma of barbecue drifting from a few houses down. It was the kind of day that made people retreat into the cool safety of their air-conditioned homes. But for one little girl, this was not just another hot summer day. It was a day filled with purpose. At the end of a small driveway, beneath the shade of an old oak tree, 8-year-old Emma Carter sat on a wobbly wooden stool, adjusting the hand-painted sign she had worked so hard on. It was a burst of color, bright letters unevenly scrawled with childish enthusiasm, reading, "Lemonade for Hope, 50 cents a cup." Her lemonade stand was simple, a folding table draped with a checkered cloth, a pitcher filled with ice-cold lemonade sweating in the heat, and a small stack of neatly arranged plastic cups. Next to it sat a mason jar labeled "Donations," already holding a handful of crumpled bills and loose change from a few early customers. Emma's small fingers fidgeted with the sign again, making sure it was visible from the street. Her bright brown eyes scanned the quiet road, looking for the next car to pass by. Every detail mattered to her, because unlike other kids who set up lemonade stands to save for a new bike or a trip to the amusement park, Emma had a different reason. She was raising money for her own chemotherapy treatments. It was an idea she had come up with one evening, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with her parents, whispering in hushed tones in the kitchen. She knew something was wrong, even if they tried to hide it. The way her mother, Claire, had been crying silently after sorting through the mountain of medical bills. The way her father, Brian, had started working extra shifts, coming home exhausted but still managing a tired smile for her. Emma had been diagnosed with leukemia nearly a year ago. The once carefree little girl who had spent her days riding her pink bike with the tassels fluttering behind her, climbing trees, and painting whimsical pictures now spent most of her time in hospital rooms, enduring needle pricks, IV drips, and the side effects of powerful medications. Her long golden hair had thinned out, now cropped short as a testament to the battle she was fighting. But what the illness had taken from her physically, it could not take from her spirit. So when she told her mother about the lemonade stand idea, Claire had hesitated at first, her heart aching at the thought of her daughter feeling responsible for their financial struggles. But when she saw the determination in Emma's eyes, she knew she couldn't say no. And now here she was, waving eagerly at every passing car, her floppy straw hat shielding her face from the harsh sun. Claire watched from the porch, her heart swelling with both pride and sorrow. She wanted to believe that this small stand could truly make a difference, but deep down, she knew that lemonade sales alone wouldn't cover the enormous medical expenses that loomed over them like an unshakable storm cloud. Still, Emma remained hopeful. A jogger passed by, offering a quick smile and wave, but not stopping. A silver sedan slowed for a moment before driving on. Emma took a deep breath, adjusted her sign, and poured herself a small cup of lemonade. She wasn't giving up. Her first customer of the day arrived, a familiar face. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman from 2 houses down, shuffled toward the stand, leaning on her cane for support. "How much for a cup, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice warm and gentle. "$1, Emma chirped, flashing a wide grin. Mrs. Henderson chuckled. "Didn't your sign say 50 cents? Emma hesitated, then giggled. "I figured people might want to give a little extra." The older woman smiled knowingly and reached into her purse, pulling out a $10 bill. "Keep the change, dear," she said softly, placing the bill into the donation jar. Her eyes lingered on the words "Lemonade for Hope" for a moment before she reached out to gently pat Emma's small hand. Emma beamed as she carefully poured a cup of lemonade and handed it over. As the hours passed, more neighbors stopped by. Some bought lemonade, others simply dropped bills into the donation jar, offering encouraging words and warm smiles. A young mother pushing a stroller, a group of kids from Emma's school dragging their parents along. Even Mr. Alvarez, the cheerful neighborhood mailman, all came by to support her cause. By midday, the donation jar had filled up more than Emma had expected, but she knew it still wasn't enough. She wasn't discouraged, though, because what she didn't know was that something extraordinary was about to happen. As she poured another cup of lemonade, adjusting her sun hat once more, a shadow stretched across the pavement in front of her stand. She looked up. A tall man, dressed in a weathered leather jacket and dark jeans, stood a few feet away, watching her with quiet interest. His posture was relaxed yet purposeful, and his presence alone seemed to command attention. His face, partially hidden behind dark sunglasses, was lined with age but unmistakably familiar. Emma squinted. He wasn't a regular jogger, nor a neighbor she had seen before. The man slowly approached, scanning the lemonade stand with a faint, almost amused smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Emma straightened up and put on her brightest smile. "Hi there," she said cheerfully. "Would you like some lemonade? It's only $1 a cup." The man crouched slightly so that he was at eye level with her. His voice, deep and gravelly, carried the weight of someone who had lived a lot of life. "$1, huh?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "Seems like a bargain." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "It's for my chemo," she explained, her tone matter-of-fact but laced with quiet strength. "I'm trying to help my mom and dad so they don't have to worry so much." The man's expression softened. He glanced at the donation jar, then back at Emma. For a long moment he seemed to hesitate, as if weighing his next move. Finally, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something unexpected. A checkbook. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, pen poised over the paper. "Emma," she said, blinking up at him. "Well, Emma," he said, scribbling something onto the check, "I think it's time this lemonade stand got the recognition it deserves." He tore the check from the book and handed it to her. Emma unfolded the slip of paper. Her small hands trembled as she read the number written on it. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open. This is $50,000, she whispered, barely able to get the words out. From the porch, Claire bolted to her feet. $50,000. The world seemed to stand still. And then someone in the growing crowd murmured the words that would change everything. "Wait a minute. Is that Clint Eastwood?" For a few moments, everything was silent. The warm breeze rustled the leaves. The ice cubes in Emma's lemonade pitcher shifted with a faint clink, and the distant hum of a lawnmower droned in the background. But in that instant, the moment Emma realized she was holding a check for $50,000, the world around her seemed to stop. She stared down at the slip of paper, her small fingers gripping it tightly as if afraid it might disappear. Her lips moved, trying to form words, but nothing came out. Her mind couldn't quite process what was happening. From the porch, Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as she rushed toward her daughter. "50,000?" she repeated, her voice trembling with disbelief. Could this be real? The crowd around them, neighbors, kids, and passers-by who had stopped for a simple cup of lemonade, began to stir. A murmur spread like wildfire. Did he really just give her 50 grand? Wait, is that? No way, that's Clint Eastwood. A wave of hushed whispers and stunned expressions passed through the small gathering. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. The moment was too extraordinary not to capture. Emma, still clutching the check, looked up at the tall man before her. His grizzled face had softened, and behind the dark sunglasses, she sensed kindness. You don't have to do this," she finally managed to say, her voice small but filled with sincerity. Clint Eastwood crouched down again, so he was at her eye level. His voice, deep and gravelly, held a quiet warmth. "I know," he said simply, "but I want to." Claire, now standing beside Emma, fought back tears. "Mr. Eastwood, she started, but her voice broke. She took a shaky breath. "I don't even know what to say. This means everything." Clint smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened the lines on his face. "You don't have to say anything," he said. Then glancing back at Emma, he added, "You've already done the hard part, kid. I'm just giving you a little push." The moment could have ended there. A generous act, a heartfelt exchange, a story that would be told for years in the small community of Santa Clarita. But it was just the beginning. As if on cue, someone in the crowd stepped forward. It was Mr. Alvarez, the neighborhood mailman, a familiar and beloved figure who always greeted residents with a cheerful smile. He pulled out his wallet and grabbed a $50 bill, placing it firmly in the donation jar. "I think Clint's got the right idea," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Let's make sure Emma gets everything she needs. It was like a switch had been flipped. One by one, the neighbors stepped forward. A young mother handed over a $20 bill. A teenager from Emma's school pulled out a crumpled $5 bill from his pocket. An older man took out his checkbook and scribbled something down, just as Clint had done. It didn't take long before the donation jar was overflowing. The energy in the air shifted. Excitement, hope, a sense of something bigger happening. Claire, overwhelmed, placed a hand over her heart. She could barely keep up with the flood of generosity. Emma watched it all unfold with wide eyes. She had started the day hoping to sell a few cups of lemonade to help her parents. Now she was witnessing something she never could have imagined. She looked back at Clint Eastwood. He stood silently, hands tucked into the pockets of his leather jacket, simply watching. There was no ego, no expectation of recognition. He had done what he came to do, and now he was letting kindness take its own course. But Clint wasn't done yet. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, neighbors heading home still buzzing with excitement, Clint leaned in toward Claire. His voice was quiet, just for her. "I've got some friends," he said. "People who would love to help out, the kind of people who don't like to see kids like Emma struggling. Don't be surprised if you hear from them in the next few days." Claire's breath caught in her throat. I I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered. Clint gave a small nod. "You don't have to," he said simply. "Just take care of your girl." Then, in true Clint Eastwood fashion, he tipped an imaginary hat, turned, and walked away, his leather jacket catching the late afternoon sunlight as he disappeared down the street. For a long moment, no one moved. Emma looked at her mother, then back at the check in her hands. "Mom," she whispered, her voice filled with awe, "I think we're going to be okay." Claire let out a breath she hadn't even realized she'd been holding, and for the first time in a very, very long time, she truly believed it. That night, as Claire and Brian sat at the kitchen table, still trying to process everything that had happened, their phones began to buzz. First it was a text from a neighbor, then a Facebook notification, then a call from a local news station. By morning, Emma's lemonade stand was the talk of Santa Clarita. By the next afternoon, it was the talk of the entire country. A single photo, Emma standing next to Clint Eastwood, her lemonade stand sign in the background, her small hands gripping the now famous $50,000 check, had gone viral. Social media exploded. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines like, "Hollywood legend surprises brave girl battling cancer." "Lemonade for Hope, how an 8-year-old inspired a community." Clint Eastwood's act of kindness goes viral. Thousands of comments poured in. "What an incredible little girl. Where can I donate?" "This story made me cry. We need more kindness in the world." Clint Eastwood is a legend, but Emma, she's the real hero. By the end of the day, the Carter family's mailbox was overflowing, not just with letters of support, but with checks from strangers who had heard Emma's story and wanted to help. A letter from a little boy in Kansas read, "Dear Emma, I saw your story and wanted to help. I don't have a lot of money, but I hope this $2 makes a difference. You are so brave. Love, Charlie, age 8. Emma held the letter close to her heart, tears filling her eyes. She looked up at her mom and dad. "Do you think we could help other kids like me?" she asked. And with that one question, the story of a little girl's lemonade stand became something much, much bigger. And it was only just beginning. The morning after Clint Eastwood's unexpected visit, the Carter family's world felt different. Not just because of the $50,000 check sitting safely on their kitchen counter, but because of what had begun to unfold. It started with a phone call. Claire was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing out the lemonade pitcher from the previous day, when the house phone rang. She wiped her hands on a dish towel before picking it up. "Hello? Hi, is this Claire Carter?" "Yes, speaking." "This is Jennifer Collins from Good Morning America. We saw your daughter's story, and we'd love to have you and Emma on the show." Claire nearly dropped the phone. On TV?" she stammered. "Yes. The whole country is talking about what happened. Clint Eastwood, a little girl with a lemonade stand, a community coming together. It's beautiful, and we'd love to share it with the world." Claire blinked rapidly, trying to process what she was hearing. I, I need to talk to my husband and Emma, but wow. Yes, thank you. She hung up and turned to find Brian standing in the doorway, rubbing the back of his neck. Who was that? He asked. Claire still couldn't believe the words coming out of her own mouth. Good Morning America wants us on their show. Brian let out a stunned laugh. Are you serious? Emma, who had been sitting on the living room floor organizing the pile of letters and donations they had received overnight, perked up. Wait, are we going to be on TV? Claire and Brian exchanged a look. This was all happening so fast. But then Claire thought about what Emma had said the night before. Do you think we could help other kids like me? She took a deep breath and smiled at her daughter. Yes, sweetie, she said. I think we are. 2 days later, the Carters were sitting on a plush studio couch in New York City, bright lights shining down on them. Emma, dressed in a lemon-yellow dress that matched her stand sign, sat between her parents, her small hands gripping Claire's tightly. Across from them, the hosts of Good Morning America beamed as the cameras rolled. We are here today with an incredible little girl, Emma Carter, whose story has taken the world by storm, one of the anchors said. Emma, tell us, why did you decide to start a lemonade stand? Emma sat up a little straighter, her nervousness fading as she answered. I just wanted to help my mom and dad, she said simply. They were working so hard to pay for my treatments, and I wanted to help them not worry so much. The audience let out a collective, "Aw," and Claire felt her throat tighten. And then, the anchor continued, you had a very special visitor, didn't you? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Uh-huh. A man in a cool leather jacket came up and bought lemonade, and then he gave me a check for $50,000. The audience gasped and clapped. And when did you realize who he was? Emma giggled. When someone in the crowd said, Wait, is that Clint Eastwood? The whole studio erupted into laughter. That's right, the host said, shaking her head in amazement. Clint Eastwood himself saw Emma's sign, stopped at her stand, and made an incredible donation. But it didn't stop there. Donations have been pouring in from all over the country. Emma, do you know how much money has been raised so far? Emma shook her head, looking up at Claire in curiosity. Claire took a steadying breath, trying not to cry on live television. As of this morning, she said, her voice thick with emotion, over $200,000 has been donated to help cover Emma's medical costs. The audience erupted into applause. Emma's eyes widened. That's so many lemonade, she whispered, making everyone laugh again. The host leaned forward. And Claire, I understand something even bigger has come from this? Claire nodded. She reached for Emma's hand and squeezed it gently. After all this generosity, Emma asked me a question, Claire said. Do you think we could help other kids like me? And that's when we knew. This isn't just about Emma anymore. She turned to the camera, her voice filled with conviction. That's why we're starting the Lemonade for Hope Foundation, a charity to help families struggling with medical bills, so no child has to choose between fighting for their life and worrying about how to afford it. The audience stood up in applause. Emma, beaming, whispered to Claire, Do you think Clint Eastwood will see this? Claire laughed through her tears. I think he already knows, sweetheart. In the days that followed their TV appearance, Emma's story spread like wildfire. Local schools started organizing lemonade stands, donating proceeds to Lemonade for Hope. Businesses pledged matching donations, doubling every dollar raised. Hospitals reached out, offering free treatments for Emma and other children in need. Celebrities joined the movement, sharing Emma's story on social media and making donations in her name. Soon, the hashtag number Lemonade for Hope was trending worldwide. But for Emma, the most special moment came one afternoon when a large package arrived at their doorstep. Claire brought it inside and Emma eagerly tore it open. Inside was a framed photo, one she recognized immediately. It was her and Clint Eastwood standing together at her lemonade stand, her donation jar between them. Taped to the back was a handwritten note. Keep fighting, kid. You're making the world a better place. Emma clutched the note to her chest, her eyes shining. I want to make him proud, she said softly. Claire wrapped her arms around her daughter, tears slipping down her cheeks. You already have, sweetie. Months passed. Emma's health slowly improved. The financial burden that had once crushed her family had lifted, thanks to the kindness of thousands of strangers. And Lemonade for Hope? It wasn't just a charity anymore. It was a movement. In schools and small towns, on bustling city streets, children across the country were setting up lemonade stands, raising money not for themselves but for others in need. A single act of generosity had ignited something far greater than anyone could have imagined. And Emma? She was no longer just a little girl with a lemonade stand. She was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the smallest hands can make the biggest difference. The world moved fast after Emma's story went viral. What had started as a simple lemonade stand in a quiet California neighborhood had exploded into a nationwide movement. The donations kept coming, the messages of support never stopped, and new lemonade stands popped up in towns Emma had never even heard of. Everywhere she looked, people were inspired by her courage. Claire and Brian could barely keep up. Their kitchen table, once covered in medical bills, was now stacked with letters, each one filled with words of kindness, encouragement, and generosity. Some were from children who had started their own lemonade stands to raise money for kids like Emma. Others were from families who had been struggling with medical costs and had received help from the Lemonade for Hope Foundation. One letter stood out. It was from a single mother in Ohio whose son had been diagnosed with leukemia. Dear Emma, I don't know if you will ever read this, but I wanted to say thank you. My little boy Caleb was diagnosed with cancer a few months ago. The bills were piling up and I was losing hope. Then one day I heard about you. Because of Lemonade for Hope, Caleb's treatments are being covered. Because of you, my son has a chance to get better. You gave us hope when we thought we had none. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Lisa and Caleb Claire wiped a tear from her cheek as she finished reading. When she looked up, she saw Emma sitting quietly, holding the letter close to her heart. I helped them, Emma whispered. You did, sweetheart, Claire said, pulling her into a hug. And not just them, so many families. Emma smiled, but her eyes were thoughtful. Do you think we can keep helping? Claire kissed the top of her head. I know we can. In the following months, Lemonade for Hope became an official nonprofit organization. With the help of volunteers, donations, and corporate sponsors, the foundation expanded beyond lemonade stands. A children's hospital in Los Angeles named a new pediatric cancer wing after Emma. A major lemonade company partnered with them, pledging a portion of their sales to help sick children. Families across the country received grants to cover medical expenses, inspired by the little girl who refused to give up. At only 8 years old, Emma Carter had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and kindness, and she was just getting started. One chilly December morning, Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, painting a picture of a lemon tree, when Brian walked in with a big grin. Hey, kiddo, he said, ruffling her short curls. Guess who called me today? Emma looked up. Who? Brian held up a cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. It was from Clint Eastwood's office, he said, watching her reaction. He invited us to a special event in Los Angeles. Emma's eyes widened. Is he making another cowboy movie? Brian chuckled. Not this time. It's an event honoring people who've made a difference this year. He smiled. And guess what? You're one of them. Emma gasped. Me? Claire walked over and hugged her. Yes, baby, you. For a long moment, Emma didn't speak. Then with a determined nod, she said, I want to go. The event was held at a grand theater in Los Angeles, the kind Emma had only seen on TV. There were bright lights, fancy dresses, and cameras flashing everywhere. Emma felt a little nervous, but Claire held her hand as they walked inside. They took their seats near the front, surrounded by other honorees, doctors, firefighters, teachers, people who had changed lives. And then the moment arrived. The host stepped onto the stage. Tonight we want to recognize a very special young lady, he said, someone whose bravery and kindness have touched the hearts of millions. Emma squeezed Claire's hand tightly. This little girl started with a simple lemonade stand, the host continued. She didn't do it for fame or recognition. She did it to help her family. But her story became so much more than that. Because of her, thousands of children have received the help they need. Because of her, an entire movement was born. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Emma Carter. The audience erupted into applause as Claire nudged Emma forward. She hesitated for just a second. Then, with a deep breath, she walked up the steps. The bright lights felt warm on her face as she reached the microphone. She looked out at the crowd, at all the people clapping, smiling, waiting to hear her speak. She swallowed hard. Then in a clear, steady voice, she spoke. "Hi," she said softly, her words carrying through the quiet auditorium. "I just wanted to say thank you." She took another breath. "When I started my lemonade stand, I just wanted to help my mom and dad. I didn't think so many people would care. But you did." Her small hands gripped the microphone a little tighter. "And now, because of you, we can help other kids like me." The audience stood and applauded. Emma turned to leave the stage when she saw someone familiar standing near the side. Clint Eastwood, dressed in his usual leather jacket, a small smile on his weathered face. Emma grinned and ran over to him. "You came," she said excitedly. Clint crouched down, just like he had the day he first met her. "Wouldn't miss it, kid." Emma hesitated, then pulled a small, folded piece of paper from her pocket. "I made you something," she said, handing it to him. Clint unfolded it and chuckled softly. It was a drawing of a cowboy holding a glass of lemonade, with the words, "Thank you for believing in me." He looked at her with pride. "You keep doing what you're doing, Emma," he said. "The world needs more people like you." Then, for the first time since they had met, he pulled her into a gentle hug. The cameras flashed, capturing the moment, a moment that would be remembered forever. Emma's story didn't end that night. It continued every time a child set up a lemonade stand in her name. Every time a family received help from Lemonade for Hope. Every time someone chose kindness, inspired by a little girl with big dreams. And years later, when Emma was all grown up, she never forgot where it started. One simple act of kindness, one small cup of lemonade, one little girl who believed she could make a difference. And she did.